Right now, you're sitting in a warm, comfortable world. You probably don't even notice it, but somewhere on a wall in your home, a tiny digital thermostat sits on standby. The moment the air drops by a single degree, a machine switches on and solves the cold before your body even registers it. Winter for you is a minor hassle, scraping frost off a windshield or grabbing a heavier coat. But for nearly all of human history, winter wasn't a hassle. Winter was a cold-blooded killer, and it never attacked from just one angle. It hit our ancestors with 4 deadly threats all at once: freezing air, total starvation, desperate predators, and endless pitch-black nights. Biology says we should have lost this war. The human body is a tropical machine. We evolved in the warm savannas of Africa. We have no thick fur, no claws, and no layer of blubber. By every law of nature, we are among the worst designed large animals on Earth to face a blizzard. Yet humans didn't stay in Africa. Different ancient cultures pushed straight into Ice Age Europe, the frozen steppes of Eurasia, and the brutal wilderness of Siberia, surviving temperatures 40 degrees below zero without a single furnace or power grid. How did fragile, hairless apes pull off the impossible across thousands of years? They didn't do it with one single trick, and it wasn't done by a single tribe. Across different eras and continents, our ancestors invented a series of brutal, genius survival strategies. But to stand a chance against the winter, they first had to defeat the most immediate killer of all, the freezing air itself, and their first major breakthrough was so tiny you could hold it in the palm of your hand. If your core body temperature drops just a few degrees, hypothermia sets in fast. Your fingers freeze stiff, your mind slows to a crawl, and your organs shut down one by one. When people picture ancient humans fighting the cold, they imagine fire, but fire has a fatal flaw. It only warms the side of you facing the flames. The second you step away to hunt or gather wood, the freezing air rushes back in. You can't carry a blazing campfire on your back through knee-deep snow. To travel and hunt, early humans in Ice Age Europe needed to wrap a personal bubble of African heat around their bodies. Draping a loose animal pelt over your shoulders doesn't work. The howling Arctic wind slips right under the sides, leaving your arms and torso exposed. In a real winter, a loose blanket still gets you killed. Around 40,000 years ago, our ancestors made a massive technological leap. Tailored, fitted clothing. They cut animal hides into precise shapes to create sealed seams, fitted sleeves, and trousers that trapped warm air directly against the skin. Making fitted clothes required an incredible piece of microtechnology, the eyed needle. Ancient craftspeople took splinters of mammoth-bone or reindeer antler, ground them down to fine points, and bored a tiny hole through the end. They harvested sinew, the tough, stretchy connective tissue from animal muscles, split it into strong threads, and stitched waterproof leather seams. By turning the fur inward against the skin and sealing the outer seams with animal fat, they created the world's first insulated parkas. This tiny bone needle was the spacesuit of the ancient world. Without it, human beings could never have stepped foot into Siberia. Now, wrapped in tailored furs, a hunter could move through a blizzard and stay alive. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, a new nightmare began. A parka can keep you warm while you walk, but it cannot save you when you stop to sleep in a 50-mile-per-hour Arctic storm. To survive the night, they needed a fortress, and where they built it will shock you. When night fell, the obvious refuge was a cave. A deep limestone cave breaks the wind, keeps the snow off, and holds a steady temperature. There was just one massive problem. Caves are rare. And across prehistoric Europe, the few dry, safe caves that did exist were usually already occupied by 800-pound cave bears, or packs of giant hyenas. Most human groups crossed open, flat plains where there were no caves and very few trees. So how do you construct a winter fortress on a frozen landscape with no timber and no stone? You build your home out of the skeletons of giant beasts. At a site called Mezherych in modern-day Ukraine, archaeologists uncovered 15,000-year-old winter dwellings built entirely from woolly mammoth bones. A single dome-shaped hut required the skeletons of up to 30 mammoths. The foundation was made by interlocking heavy jawbones like bricks. The walls were stacked leg bones and shoulder blades, and the entryways were framed by massive arching ivory tusks. To seal these bone fortresses against the howling wind, builders stretched hides over the frame and packed a thick layer of turf and wet snow against the outside walls. It sounds backward, but trapped snow is packed with millions of tiny air pockets, making it one of the best natural insulators on Earth. Inside a mammoth-bone hut lined with furs and warmed by a small hearth fire, the temperature stayed well above freezing while a deadly blizzard raged outside. Across different regions, humans adapted with whatever materials they had, from bone huts in Eurasia to turf shelters and ice dwellings further north. They had built a warm, living haven out of the dead. But a well-sealed shelter creates a fresh, terrifying crisis. You're safe from the wind, but you are now trapped inside. And as the weeks turn into months, the food runs out, forcing our ancestors to face a threat that no hut or coat could protect them from. Winter is the season when the earth stops producing food. Plants die back, berries vanish, and edible roots freeze solid under 3 feet of soil. Many animals hibernate or migrate south, leaving the landscape empty. In the freezing cold, the human body burns calories at an extreme rate just to keep its internal furnace running. For a hunter, winter becomes a brutal math equation. If you burn 2,000 calories hunting in deep snow but only catch a small rabbit that gives you 500 calories, you're losing the game. Do that for a few weeks, and you starve. To survive the long freeze, ancient gatherers had to collect massive stockpiles of food during autumn and preserve it without refrigerators or modern chemicals. In cold regions, they turned the frozen earth into their personal deep freezer. Hunters dug pits down into the permafrost, packed them with fresh meat, and sealed them with heavy stones and ice. The ground kept the meat frozen solid from October until spring. In warmer or drier regions, they used smoke drying. Slicing meat into thin strips and hanging it over a low fire pulled out all the moisture, while wood smoke created an acidic barrier that stopped bacteria from growing. However, surviving winter required more than just meat. In fact, eating only lean meat will kill you. When your body relies entirely on lean protein, like wild rabbits or deer, without fat, your liver becomes overloaded trying to process it. This leads to a dangerous condition known as protein poisoning, or rabbit starvation. You can eat 10 pounds of lean meat a day and still starve to death. The most precious substance in the ancient winter was pure animal fat. Fat contains more than double the energy per pound compared to lean meat. Ancient hunters smashed open heavy mammoth and bison leg bones with rocks to scoop out the rich marrow inside. They melted animal fat down and mixed it directly with crushed dried meat and dried berries to create a dense ration known as pemmican. Pemmican was the ultimate ancient energy bar. It packed thousands of calories into a small leather pouch, required no cooking, and could sit for years without rotting. With tailored coats for the cold, bone huts for the night, and fat-rich pemmican for hunger, our ancestors had beaten 3 of winter's deadly traps. But as late December arrived, the 4th weapon hit, one that didn't attack the body, but threatened to destroy the human mind from the inside out. The further north early humans travelled, the shorter the days became. In northern latitudes, the sun peaked above the horizon for just a few short hours before slipping away, plunging the world into up to 20 hours of pitch-black darkness. You cannot travel or hunt safely in total darkness. Families were trapped inside small, dark, smoky shelters, pressed shoulder to shoulder with the same handful of people for months on end. Outside, the Arctic wind howled endlessly. Inside, the only light came from the orange embers of a small fire. This extreme isolation and confinement created severe psychological strain. Anxiety, paranoia, and depression crept into the mind. In the deep dark, every strange noise outside sounded like a predator, and every small disagreement inside threatened to tear the group apart. To survive the mental siege of the winter night, ancient people did something remarkable. They filled the darkness with work and imagination. By the glow of the fire, the shelter became a nightly workshop. Men shaped new flint spear points and repaired tools. Women softened animal hides and stitched clothes for growing children. Keeping their hands busy kept their minds focused. When the tools were put away, the real magic began. Around that winter hearth, early humans gathered close to tell grand epic stories. Elders passed down survival knowledge, sang songs of ancient hunts, and created mythologies to explain why the sun had vanished, promising that light would return in the spring. Recent studies of modern hunter-gatherer cultures show that while daytime talk is almost entirely about practical tasks, nighttime conversation shifts drastically. Over 80% of talk around a fire is spent on storytelling, singing, and rituals. Huddled together against the freezing dark, sharing warmth and tales, early humans held each other sane. The endless winter nights didn't break the human mind. They forced us to invent art, language, and culture. When you look at the big picture of human history, a striking truth comes into focus. Winter wasn't just a terrible hazard our ancestors barely survived, it was the forge that made us who we are today. The cold pushed us to invent tailored clothing and needle technology. The lack of caves forced us to become architects, building homes out of mammoth skeletons and snow. The threat of starvation drove us to master food preservation and caloric science. And the endless darkness forced us to develop language, music, and storytelling to keep our spirits alive. Every single winter in the past was a brutal test. Millions of our ancestors took that test across thousands of years, surviving through sheer stubbornness, teamwork, and brilliant ingenuity so that the human story would continue. Now look at your own world today. You sit in a room where you can adjust the temperature with a tap of your finger. You can open a refrigerator in the middle of winter and pull out fresh food grown on the other side of the planet. You can flip a switch at midnight and flood your home with light. You don't have to fight winter anymore. You barely even register it. And that isn't because winter got any gentler. The Arctic winds blow just as cold today as they did 30,000 years ago. It's because thousands of generations of human beings, freezing, starving, and huddling together in the dark, slowly figured out how to beat it, one invention at a time. They fought the four faces of winter and won so that you would never have to.